Rob.
And this is episode 47 of The List Makers, a spin-off show from The Doctor Who Show where we make lists and discuss them. Today, our topic is top 5 funny stories. Are you ready for this one, Rob?
Yes, Dave. When it came out of the hat, I thought, funny stories. I think you heard me even on the show, listeners saying, funny stories? Funny stories. Okay, yeah.
Yes, look, I mean, there are a number of ways you can interpret that. I must admit, I got pretty down the line, but I reckon there's one guaranteed snap in this.
I reckon there's 2.
I could certainly see more, but I think this one here is a definite. We might get a second.
Okay.
Yes, listeners out there, do you do the same thing? Do you make your 5 and then to see how many we're going to snap with? Is that a game you also play? I'll be interested to hear.
Yeah.
But we will dive in. It's my turn to go first. I shall make a list.
Okay.
Rob, ironically, for an episode about top 5 funny stories, I've gone pretty straight down the line with this one, played a very straight bat.
Right, yep.
And I've just gone for the ones that I find funny, the ones that make me laugh. Incredibly subjective, but let's see how we go.
Okay.
Number 5, I've dived straight in at the Hartnell era with The Mythmakers. I think this is an incredibly underrated story generally, but particularly for its sense of humour. Right from the start, it's got some wonderful little gags. I love it where the Doctor just pops out of the TARDIS. "Stop! You must not kick a man when he's down. You have killed this poor fellow. Oh, but in your name." I love that sort of style. Yeah. Then right through to the other end where Cassandra is doing the "will you not? Then woe to the House of Priam. Woe to the Trojans." I'm afraid it's a bit late to say woe to the horse. I've just given instructions for it to be brought into the city. There's just so many of those wonderful gags. But You also get Hartnell's wonderful comic timing. You get him paired up with Odysseus, which is just a really wonderful character who's sort of big and gruff and the perfect foil for him. Lots of wit, lots of sort of undermining of legend. I think it's a really fun and funny story. Only down the list because in episode 4 it does turn into the horrible slaughter of an entire city of people.
Yes.
Including some guest characters that we really like. So it's not an out-and-out comedy, but it's a funny story, a very witty story. And I like wit. You might get that across some of my picks.
Good pick.
Number 4, I have a Douglas Adams pick, and it is The Pirate Planet. This is one that actually makes me laugh, and I can certainly remember the first time I saw this as a teenager, watching it on repeat, watching it with Dad, and my dad absolutely guffawing with laughter. It's got the wonderful lines. It's got the quite funny overacting by the pirate captain himself, which I think you get away with because it's all meant to be an act. It's meant to be him throwing Xanxia offside and her undermining him. So you get all that. You get lots of really witty and funny lines. But I think one of the funniest sequences in Doctor Who is the little dialogue where he goes through the induction corridor and then stops the guard and he has the whole sort of thing of the Newton's Revenge. That makes me chuckle even when I say it out there. So it's a story that makes me laugh. It's funny. It's super early Douglas Adams. It's proto-Douglas Adams.
Yeah.
And I think that really shows, and that's really good.
All right.
Number 3, one that I was umming and ahhing about, but in the end, I sat there and just thought, I laugh a lot watching this. Is it necessarily a story that you think of as being one that leads into comedy or leans into being a funny story? I wouldn't have thought so, and that's why it didn't immediately pop into my mind as I was making my list. But as I was looking through stories and working out where to go, I thought I laughed a lot during this, and I grinned a lot during this, and it was a very clever, funny, witty 2-part story from New Who, and that is The Empty Child, The Doctor Dances.
Oh, really?
Really? Look, it is a very serious story. There's some proper horror moments in there. The moment where Victor Meldrew suddenly turns into a gas mask, he's sort of vomiting up a gas mask. I retched, that was horrible, and it's got some deep morals in there, but there's lots of really good banter between the Doctor and Jack and Rose. There's some really good gags. I get the feeling that Moffat, who does write quite light and witty sort of fun dialogue, has been clearly waiting to write a Doctor Who story for a very long time. And he's just throwing it all out there, his ideas, his concepts, his characters, but also just his humour. And there's just so many little exchanges in there which I feel are really, really funny. The stuff about the sonic laser versus the sonic screwdriver is just one example. It's all just really, really good. I think, the way that the cast kind of plays it almost straight as well, particularly Richard Wilson, where he's I used to have a leg. Oh, well, maybe it grew back. Just really, really straight lines and delivered quite the right way. So, is it a story I think it was being funny? No, but I laughed a lot. It's witty. It's clever.
Yeah, I would have never have picked that.
Well, okay, well, I'll rule that as a snap then. That's a spoiler.
Oopsie.
There you go. Number 2, one that was always going to be on my list, and that is back to the Hartnell era for the Romans. This was meant to be funny. It was meant to be a light-hearted historical comedy, and it works. And it works particularly because William Hartnell is very, very underrated as a comic actor. He can do asides perfectly. His comic timing is perfect. And again, you see that very, very early on with the whole little exchange about, oh, don't you think so, Chesterton? Oh, Barbara's calling for you. Just the way that he does it so perfectly is really funny. Then he just goes over the top when he should, particularly with all the stuff about being fed to the lions and you're, a roaring success, you might say. He's subtle when he needs to be. He's quick when he needs to be. He's over the top and showing the centering when he needs to be. Nero is really funny, not remotely historical, but just a funny character. and just some of his asides as well. The moment when he gives Titty Lilas the drink and he dies of poisoning. Oh, he was right. Just again, those sort of things just make me laugh. And it's a really good story to boot.
Yeah.
Number 1 was always going to be number 1. It's the one I think will be a snap. We'll see if it happens. That is The City of Death. Mm-hmm. Douglas Adams at the height of his powers. Tom Baker at the height of his just off-the-rail unhingedness. Lalla Ward, fantastic. You've got Julian Glover in there. You've got an amazing cast, but just line after line after line is just clever, witty, funny. We all know the lines. The exchange about the Louis Cairns chair, the nobody could be as stupid as he seems, all the way through to, where are you going? Never mind. We all know the lines. It's just wall-to-wall funny. It's the Doctor Who I would be least afraid to show somebody else. It's bloody Douglas Adams, and how lucky were we to have him writing for us. And again, a line from the Discontinuity Guide I've repeated before, but it stands up here. Just when you think it can't get any better, John bloody Cleese turns up. So that's the summary. That's my list. Is it, I feel, one of my more predictable lists? Probably. I don't care. It's a strong one in my view.
Yeah, we're probably in similar territory tonight, Dave, because the 2 snaps I thought would happen did happen.
Right, there you go.
Yeah. But that means I've got 3 that you didn't have, so let's have the list.
Let's make your list, Rob.
In at number 5, I had to include the Romans in this list.
Nice.
But ranking it any higher than 5 didn't feel quite right, at least for me. I know your mileage obviously varied, Dave.
For sure.
I find the humour is sharp and it's witty, but it's also very much of its time. And compared to what's coming up in my list, the laughs feel a bit subtler. They're less flashy. Don't get me wrong, I still think it's a fun story, and Hartnell is on top form, and Derek Francis as Nero is clearly having a blast. It's really quite enjoyable, or it wouldn't make my list. And yes, I do think it's a great reminder that the Hartnell era could be playful and funny, something that, not everyone associates with it, particularly if they haven't seen it and they just rely on what other fans say. So, dear listener, if you haven't seen this one, that's a recommendation from both of us. I'm confident you'll be amused, maybe even surprised, but for mine, don't go in expecting laugh-out-loud moments all the time, perhaps on the same level as the episodes that come later in this list.
Understood.
In at number 4, I've got The Unicorn and the Wasp. This is, of course, both a loving homage to and a playful send-up of Agatha Christie's work, which is fitting since Christie herself is a character in it. And I think Gareth Roberts must have a real love for her stories, or at least he's read enough of them, or maybe watched enough of them on TV to really nail the tone, because everything you'd expect is here: the grand country house, the hammy overacting, all the classic tropes of a Christie whodunit. The cast throw themselves in with a real enthusiasm too. I think they notice that it's a fun script, so they really throw themselves in. It's a really fun thing to watch. And I've said it before on this podcast, this story feels like a bit of a forgotten gem in the Tennant era. It doesn't often make people's top 10 lists, but it's fun, and I think it deserves more love. So if you've overlooked this one for a while, dear listener, it's worth a revisit, I think. In at number 3, another Gareth Roberts story for my list, and for good reason. What's not widely known about The Lodger is that it's inspired by a Doctor Who magazine comic strip that Roberts wrote, featuring the 10th Doctor.
I didn't know that, no.
Did you not? Okay.
No.
In this story, he's crashing at Mickey Smith's house, and at the same time manages to save the Earth. So Roberts had apparently been dreaming of a story where the Doctor navigates being an ordinary human since he was a kid. So you could say, oh, this is a concept literally decades in the making. But of course the TV episode was, mostly written from scratch. But that core idea stayed intact from when he was a child through to writing the comic in Dwim, through to the TV episode, which I think Moffat specifically requested he write. The Doctor trying and generally failing to blend in with everyday humans can make for a delightful concept, proof that even, small-scale domestic Doctor Who can bring home the bacon, whether it's got James Corden in it or not.
Fair enough.
In at number 2, I've got Robot of Sherwood. And, and this is a story that's really grown for me over the years to become a standout of Capaldi's era and definitely a standout of his first season. That clash you have between Capaldi's really grumpy Doctor and the overly cheerful Robin is such fertile ground for comedy. So there's a lot of fun to be had, assuming you're in the mood for it, I think, and in the mood for a story that doesn't take itself too seriously, which is where I think I went wrong, Dave, in the first place. We had season 1 Capaldi, and he's doing the Malcolm Tucker thing, and initially I was on board with that. Later I'd come to see it as a mistake. And then we got to this story, and I'm wanting to see, cranky Malcolm Tucker doing serious things. And this is only about the 3rd episode into the season, I think. And it was being all what I saw as stupid and whimsical. And I was like, oh, no, don't do that. But now my brain is calibrated to what it is and what it wants to be. I really, really like it. So leopards do change their spots sometimes, folks. I think this is a good one.
Nice.
Finally, in at number 1, we have City of Death.
As I predicted, no shock.
Okay, 2 words, Douglas Bloody Adams. That's 3 words, I guess. While there's plenty of humour, across everything Adams either wrote or script edited, City of Death is easily the most iconic and the beloved one, making it my pick for this list. That said, credit where it's due, David Fisher wrote the original draft, so technically it isn't Adams' story, but let's be honest, his fingerprints are all over the rewrite, and the wit and the charm that he brings to it are hard to miss. And yes, I know every reviewer is obligated to mention the John Cleese cameo, as that discontinuity guide did as well, Dave, but I think it's the regular cast that really shines here. Tom and Lala are in perfect sync, and with Adams steering the ship, they're pretty much untouchable. So this isn't just funny Doctor Who, it's quality Doctor Who, and it's massively popular for a reason, and rightly so. Here endeth my list.
Wow, I don't think it's often that we both snap on number 1.
No, hardly ever.
Sometimes our number 1s are on the other person's list, but snapping number 1 is unusual, but I don't think there's a particular shock about the City of Death. I really liked your list there, Rob. You thought of some New Who stories that I didn't, and I'm particularly interested and pleased that you got Robot of Sherwood in there, because I was thinking, as I was creating my list, I want a Capaldi in there, because he's a really good, funny actor with perfect comic timing. I mean, there's a reason why he's the lead character in one of the most successful recent British comedies, to think of it. Yeah. But I just couldn't find a whole story where I thought that was the case. And I think I did miss the Robot of Sherwood, because you're right. It was a really enjoyable story. It was a fun story. And as somebody who grew up on endless repeats of Maid Marian and Her Merry Men, written by the wonderful Tony Robertson, of course, it had those vibes. So that was really, really cool. A couple that missed my list, Rob.
Yes.
Sharda, of course, the other Douglas Adams one.
Oh, yes.
Gareth Roberts, but not a TV, The Romance of Crime, his first missing adventure, I think is an incredibly funny book. Mm-hmm. And I was tempted to go with The Horns of Nimon, because it's got some really wonderful, clever Douglas Adams dialogue. It's also got some stuff that I find funny because I'm laughing at it, not with it. And I'm not sure that that's a good reason to displace any of the others. So they were all in there.
Yeah. Well, listening back to your list, I think when you came up with the Myth Makers, I thought, oh, is he trying to wrong foot me, knowing that I'll do the Romans and he's doing the Myth Makers? They're sort of 2 sides of the same coin. And then when you did Pirate Planet, I thought, oh, is that going to be his Douglas Adams one? And he's not going to do City of Death, because again, he knows I'll do that, so he's slipping in this. So I was, not that I could second guess, my list was locked in, Dave, but I was thinking, oh, are you going down some alternate routes? But you didn't. You just doubled up. Yeah,
no, I did. I think they're very funny stories. And it's not surprising. If you get a writer who writes very well in that sort of style, they're going to do it again and again. And even the gunfighters, if we were doing top 10, I'll probably have slotted the gunfighters in at some point. Sharda, I definitely would have. So we would have had some sets.
I agree, because I had 2 Gareth Roberts.
Well, exactly right. Right. And yes, I could have had some Gareth Roberts stuff in there as well. Interesting comment you made there, Rob, about the era of the humour being different and working less for you. And it's interesting because, as you say, I've got 4 classics and indeed 2 Hartnells, whereas you've only got the 2 classics.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about a comment I made to Doc Hume over at the Diddly Dum podcast when the first season of the new series of Frasier came out. And I was saying that it's really clear that there's a big generational divide in the cast between how they do comedy, because you've got the 2 elder statesmen, Kelsey Grammer and Nicholas Lyndhurst, doing a very sort of understated, just let the joke carry itself. We're just going to have a funny line and the audience will realise it's funny. And then you have the younger cast who are doing and now here comes a joke I'm going to leave space for and make sure you know it's a joke. And these completely different ways of acting comedy that I just thought really stood out in that series, because you got a very young cast and a very old cast. And so you're right, there is that difference. And I think it is fair to say my comedy preferences are a lot older. I mean, if you ask me for my comedy go-tos, I'm more likely to have things like The Goodies, I'm Sorry, I'll Read That Again, Yes Minister, you know, those 80s Penelope Keith sitcoms, you know, they're the sort of stuff that I come to. Of course, there are modern comedies I like. I enjoy Frasier. I mean, Seinfeld, is that modern now? I was at high school for Seinfeld. I enjoy The Thick of It. I enjoy Will It Grace. Again, I was in high school. Is that old? You know, is that new? I don't know. But I would say that my humour does lean more towards that sort of subtler, almost dry British wit, if you like.
Yeah, and I wanted to highlight that difference and why I was using it to put the Romans on the list, because it's like going to see an Oscar Wilde play, and it's so witty and funny, but it's not like watching, say, American Pie. But, you know, American Pie is a hilariously funny... I know you love American Pie.
I love American Pie. It would be my favourite comedy, yes.
You know, but it's completely different comedy, and the Romans is so very different. Like I said, I use the term subtler and less flashy than what comes after, but it still made my list because I still like it too. But I wanted to definitely draw a line between it and stuff from New Who, for example. Yeah,
no, it's a really interesting distinction. Did you find this a hard list to make, Rob?
A little. It's not like there's a lot of funny stories. There's a lot of stories that have a funny moment, or a particularly funny line, but they're not funny stories. So it was reasonably hard to make the list, but not super hard.
Yeah, look, I sort of, you know, found my first 2 or 3 very easily, and then finding 4 and 5 was a lot harder. But particularly when I thought, I should have a New Who story in there. And in the end, I just thought, you know what, I did laugh a lot at The Empty Child. And I think Stephen Moffat is a very funny writer. He's a very witty writer when he wants to be. And, I was glad I got it in there. But, yes, it's funny. Doctor Who can be a very enjoyable show. And there are definitely stories, particularly I think of a lot of Tom Baker's, some Troutons, that you're right, there are lots of very clever, witty lines of dialogue in there. But is it really funny? It is a harder thing to do. And, look,
there's hilarious stuff all through Davo. People don't associate Davo with humour, but he says some wickedly acid lines at times.
Oh, yes, absolutely, particularly later Davo. Yeah, no, it's all there. It's all there. It's really, really good. It's just a matter of taste and consistency. But, look, that's good. And look, if nothing else, you've given me a couple of New Who stories that I haven't watched in a very long time. I really need to pull out. I don't think I've rewatched Unicorn and the Wasp ever.
Oh, my God. It's great.
Yes, I need to. That's going on my list of watching stories.
Very good.
But we need to make another list next month, and let's find out, Rob, what that is going to be.
Okay.
And from the Hat of Rassilon, we have one sent in by listener and a friend of the podcast, an occasional guest, Dylan Rees. Top 5 extended universe stories that should be made for TV.
Oh, golly. That's a good topic.
That's a good topic and an incredibly tough topic. But we're out of time today, Rob.
Yeah.
We'll be back making some more lists next month. Until then, I've been Dave.
I've been Rob.
We'll speak again soon.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.